Well, good afternoon, Ken.
Good afternoon, Randy.
Thanks again for joining me today. My goal is to simply to help Visti's chairs and business owners get to know you a little better.
Oh, I love that. Thank you.
Sure. To start, how did your journey lead you to this moment?
Wow, that's a big question. So, my background is in the entertainment business. I spent many years as a film writer, director, and producer in Hollywood. I had a wonderful business. I wrote studio movies and directed indie films and just loved every minute of it. That was my business. And then over the last 10 or 12 years, more detailed than this video can handle, the movie business just changed entirely. The entire business model of the movie business changed with streamers, and then there was a Writers Guild strike. And I just became clear a few years back that that business model for my life was not going to provide for my life in the way that it had for my entire lifetime before that. And I started looking for new things to do. And the one thing that I knew I was good at was storytelling. And as I did some research, one of the things that came up as a potential new avenue for me was being a public speaker, standing on stage, telling stories and helping people. And I talk about this in my presentation to Vistage members. All of film directing is coaching. A film director coaches actors and coaches crew. So I learned a lot about coaching people to be better at what they did over the years. And I was a good storyteller. So I thought I would become a public speaker. And then I happened to be out to lunch one day with a friend of mine who was a Vistage member, though I didn't know that at the time, telling him, I think I'm going to be a public speaker. And he said, have you thought about speaking for Vistage? I said, what's a Vistage? I had no idea what it was. So he introduced me to his chair, wonderful man out here named Gary Brenglass, who is now my chair. I'm a member also, and he wound up being my chair. But at the time, Gary was just super generous and helpful. He had a few Zoom calls with me and helped me prepare my first presentation and invited me to come in and present to a couple of his CEO groups, and those went well. And I made it into the speaking bureau, and several years, and I think coming up on 100 presentations now. I've just fully embraced the Vistage world. I'm a member and a speaker, and I've been all over the country, and I just love Vistage members and chairs. I think what they're doing in their lives to make business and life better is spectacular, and I'm grateful to be a part of it.
Fantastic. And I also noticed that you were the chair of the year last year, 2024. Congratulations.
Not chair of the year. I'll correct that. Vistage
Yeah.
has an award called Speaker, Top Performing Speaker, and
Ah, performing.
there are
Well,
many.
that's
Yeah, I think there were 25 or maybe 50 speakers who earned the Speaker Top Performer Award. One of the things I like about that award is that it's based on the scores. Coming out of Hollywood, there's a lot of awards in Hollywood, but they're all subjective. It'd be great if the best picture of the year was the picture that did the biggest box office, but it's not. It's creative and it's subjective. And when you win an award, it's because people liked or didn't like your film. What I was really flattered by in the Vistage Top Performer Speaker Award is that it's based on achieving a certain level of score and recommendation in your presentation. So it's reflective of the impact that you have on members in your talk. So that I earned that isn't because people liked my talk or liked me. It's that they got value and impact from the talk and scored it that way. And that really meant a lot to me.
well, when I hear top speaker, I'm looking at you as the top speaker.
Yeah, that wasn't the award. There was a speaker of the
Speaker of
year. It
the
went to
year. Yeah.
Kathleen Quinn Vota, who's a friend of mine, and she's amazing and fantastic. She actually earned speaker of the year. I did not earn speaker of the year. I was one of the recipients of the top performing speakers of the year. Little differentiation. Maybe one day soon,
Well,
speaker of the year. I look forward to it.
all right. Well, we'll push for that to happen. Now, your presentation is around fast. Can you tell us what that means or should mean to our chairs and members?
Absolutely. It's called the FAST way, and FAST is an acronym, stands for feelings, actions, speech, and thoughts. And the idea is that everything you think, feel, say, and do is what steers you through life. And a lot of people don't think of life that way. If I were to say, hey, Randy, tell me about yourself, the way most people would answer that question is they would point to the events of their lives. They would point to where they were born and where they went to college, and maybe as they got into business, their first job, or personal events when they had kids or when they got married. They'll point to big setbacks like the market crash of 15 years ago, or COVID, or even recently tariffs. They'll look at big events of their lives, and they'll say, this happened to me, and this happened to me, and this happened to me, and that's kind of how I got to be where I am. And I don't really think that's the case. I think that all events like that happen to everybody in some way. What really steers us through life is how we think and feel about those events when they're happening and about ourselves in relationship to those events. And that how we think and feel about those things steers kind of how we talk about our lives. If bad things happen and you start to complain, that's you speaking from your thoughts and feelings, and how we act into our lives, the actions we take or don't take based on how we think and feel about what's going on in our life. When you add it all up, the way you think, feel, speak, and act is what I call, what a lot of people call your way of being. And it's your way of being as you meet the events and challenges of your life that really steers you into them, through them, around them, or back away from them, or give up on them. And so the fast way is about becoming aware of your way of being, aware of the way you are thinking and feeling about yourself and the world and situations that are happening to you, and how those thoughts and feelings are causing you to speak and act, and where that's not working for you, where it's not creating success, where it's not achieving fulfillment in your desires, how to capture that and change it, how to really become intentional about your way of being, intentional about how you think and feel about yourself and the events that are going on around you. And from that intentionality of thoughts and feelings, create an intentionality in the way you talk about yourself and your events in the world, letting go of complaints and blame and empowering your speech, and taking actions that you might not take when doubts and fears and insecurities and anxieties are driving your actions. And you set those aside and act in a different way. And you can create extraordinarily different results in your life than history has had you create when your intentionality around how you think, feel, speak, and act adds up. And I call it the fast way because even though it may take a few months or a year for someone to really transform their way of being, that's a lot faster than living in the same old habits of thoughts and feelings and words and behaviors that haven't led you towards where you want to get to go and likely never will.
I'm sure we both know people, I know I do, where they get seems like they get locked in a certain mindset and they just they're almost trapped and everybody around them feels how they're trapped, but they have no way of getting out from underneath this feeling.
Yeah. Well, there are extremes, and it's easy to point to people who have had lots of disappointments in their life or a consistent lack of success in their life, get stuck and develop a victim mindset. But it's really, while addressing the extremes can be the easy example, it can really be far more subtle than that. I had a member in one of my sessions recently talk about how he felt that the company he was at needed to have really profound transformation if they were going to survive in the marketplace, but that the owners of the company wouldn't follow through with his recommendations. And that's not a big extreme victimhood sense of being trapped. That's just like a, hey, I work here as an employee and the owners aren't doing what I really think we need to do. And if they don't do what I think we need to do, the company's not going to succeed. How do I get around that? And in the course of the conversation, what he identified was that he had also, at the very same time, been thinking about retirement and had times been talking about retirement and did not realize until we were in the Fast Way presentation that the combination of, hey, you really need to go through massive change if you want to survive, and I'm thinking of leaving soon, we're not supporting each other as a conversation. And that in his talking about retirement, he wasn't giving the owners confidence in his proposals for how to change the company. And it's those kind of subtleties. You don't need to be in a massive life upheaval or dramatic downturn and fall into victimhood for pattern ways of being to take a hold of you. Our everyday lives develop very subtle ways of thinking and feeling that are creating very subtle ways of speaking and acting that are not building relationships and not leading us towards the goals that we don't even really realize are happening moment by moment. They're hard to see from the outside and they're hard to see from the inside. And what the fast way does is I've created a methodology, a practice that allows you to assess what your thoughts, feelings, words, and actions are in a moment and figure out, is this leading me towards where I want to go? And if not, why not? And how do I change it into something that would be more effective?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of our key group. Our key group for the viewers of this that may not be aware are direct reports of the business owner, the CEO. And one of the things I tell them in the key group is we're not allowing you to badmouth your boss. We can't fix your boss, but we surely can manage up and we'll train you on how to do that so you kind of prevent some of the things that you were talking about where you feel like you got the answer but you can't communicate it to your boss, your CEO, your business owner, and then you feel like you're stuck in the mud all the time. So very similar process.
Yeah, that's what it's really all about. You mentioned communication. It's really about communication. People, generally as human beings, we put a lot of power in our words. We think, I want to go talk to my boss, and this is what I'm going to say to him or her. Or a boss thinks, I want to go talk to this employee, and this is what I'm going to say to him or her. Or you're on a sales call with a lead, this is what I'm going to say to him or her. And we really don't look at just how much our doubts, our fears, our insecurities, our thoughts, our desires, our attachment to outcomes, our expectations, our grudges, our previous belief systems are affecting how that communication comes across to somebody. So if you have a colleague, doesn't have to be a boss or a boss, employee, colleague, whoever it is, a potential lead who you want to enroll in a situation, but 3 years ago you had a disappointment with that colleague and it left you feeling a little embittered. And then that person comes to you to talk about this situation. It could be a great idea. But if the history of your feeling embittered about a previous interaction is going to affect how you communicate with that person, that's going to derail the potential of that new idea succeeding, likely without either person even really being aware of it. And it's those kind of interactions that cause real breakdowns of communication and relationship and damage opportunities and successes. And the fast play is all about looking at that. How do I look at how I'm feeling about this other person right now? Or something that happened to us in the past? Or something that happened in my past that's making me feel awkward in a situation that it has nothing to do with, but I'm still bringing that to the table. And it's coming across in how I look at people and the tone of voice I have with people and the body language I have with people and the words I speak with people. I had a Vistage member in a room. In one sentence, he said, we had 65% growth last year, but man, it was really painful. I said, is that how you're talking to your team? And he said, what I say. And everyone in the room went, what do you mean? What did you say? Like, we all heard what you said. He didn't even hear himself say those words. He couldn't even see his body doing what his body was doing. It's just that the experience of the pain of rapid growth was living in him so big that it was coming out through his words and through his body, sending the message of, I don't want to do that again. So if he's in front of his team going, congratulations on the 65% growth last quarter, everybody, but man, we really, oh, I know it was painful. They're getting the message of don't go do that again instead of the message of go do that again. He's going to go to the board of directors and say, I just had a great talk with everybody. I encourage them to go double their growth without realizing that the message he was really sending was back it down because it was painful for him. That's not massive victimhood. That's just people having embodied emotional reactional experiences from their life that are coming through them in ways of speaking and acting that they don't realize. And it's steering us away from our goals. And the fast way is about learning a methodology to see that in yourself instead of waiting for other people to see it in you and change it to be more effective.
Well, it's like a lot of things in Vistage. We are a business organization, but a lot of things we learn and talk about are people related, whether it's family, relationships, and so forth. It sounds like something that will actually benefit people with possibly their spouse, their children, the people they love the most, but they're having the same basic effect on them as you're talking about. Have you have any examples of that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've done several spousal retreats where the spouses are there and I'm talking about all of this material through business and they're throwing in personal situations. I just had a new client, a Vistage member who just signed up for my one-to-one executive coaching course. We were in our first session talking about business objectives he has for turning business around. And just towards the end of the call, he let me know that he was leaving the next morning to go on vacation with his family. And he said to me, based on a lot of the material that we'd done in the hour of the call, do you think some of this would apply to my vacation? And what came out in just a 5 minute conversation was, while he was super happy to be going on vacation with his family and his teenage son and daughter and his wife, like super happy, he was stressed about the expense, and it was over the holiday, which wasn't a good time of year. And there was some illness back at home that was on his mind, and business things that were on his mind. And he didn't realize that he was going on this vacation carrying the energy of expense and time and business things he was believing leaving behind. And if he hadn't paid attention to that, he would have woken up the next morning stressed about getting to the airport on time, and not wanting to check into the executive lounge instead of sitting in the regular lounge, or eating dinner at the drive-through stand instead of having a nice meal. And when the family said, let's go on this tour, he would have grumbled. Like, all of that would have affected the enjoyment that everybody had. And when it comes down to it, like, the money really wasn't an issue. But if it was living as an issue inside of him, that's going to come across and affect the joy of the relation of the vacation. So yes, when you start learning to become aware of and intentional about your thoughts and feelings and the words and actions that they create and the body language that it creates, there's no way to do it without looking at your spousal relationship, at your relationship with your kids and your friends and your family. It's a whole life practice that I just get into with people through business, because it's where the immediate tangible financial result comes from. But the life benefits are extraordinary.
This is excellent. I'm just really looking forward to having you present next month. Is there anything else that we should be talking about before we close today?
Oh, I think we covered kind of the basics of it. There's obviously a lot more details when we get into it. I mean, I guess I'll just say, in truth, when you talk about mindset, um, it's not new material. I mean, it's intuitive, especially in business and especially in Vistage. We know, to quote some books, mindset matters. We know, to quote some books, the power of positive thinking. Most people have read Ed Milet or Tony Robbins or Grant Cardone. We know that these are truths, that our outlook and perspective on things have meaning and application. It's just that when we go through life, we lose sight of it. When we're in a situation that is stressful or challenging and we can't find a solution to, we forget that we are only seeing that situation through the lens that we are seeing that situation through. We forget that we have chosen a mindset. We tend to think that it's absolute. In fact, we don't even think that it's absolute. We just live in its absoluteness. Of course, this is how I see this thing. What other way could there be? Without even the lens of that I am being in that absolute. It just feels, fish in a bowl. It's your whole world. And what I wanted to create was a methodology, not just an ideology, not just 250 pages of a book where you go, well, of course, mindset matters, but a methodology that you can use on a practicable, repeatable basis to look at your life moment by moment, not just day by day or month by month, but moment by moment, and develop a practice to say, what am I thinking and feeling right? I use the word context. What is my context right now? And how is that context going to lead to what I call your content, which is your words and actions? How is that context going to lead to content? And will those words and actions create relationship and potential success for me, or lead me away from them? And that's what I really deliver in the Vistage sessions, is the methodology that people can put into place in their life and bring to their teams. And then that's what I do in my coaching for individuals and teams, is implement a methodology that allows us to really develop the practice of not just positive mindset, but the actions that can come from positive mindset. And when you do that, we could go on for another hour about the results that I've seen. Just extraordinary results in, my vernacular, much faster than you have when you live in old behaviors that aren't leading you towards where you want to go.
Well, that's like what Child talked about in Atomic Habits. Don't set the goal, create the process. It sounds
Mhm.
like you're creating the process, which will then enable you to achieve more
Yes,
or
absolutely.
be happier or make your spouse happier or make your employees happier. It's all tied together, but creating that process of being able to make that happen.
all of that, and the reason I call it the fast way, beyond being a nice acronym, all of that much faster than we do when we keep applying an old way of being that is proven not to work to the same thing forever.
And we're often guilty of that. So
Well,
I'm really looking
it's
forward.
human.
It is human. Well, I appreciate your time today, and I really do look forward to next month. And I'm confident my members will have walk away with meaningful and actionable takeaways, which we always are looking for, what they can do in their life to make it better, make their business better. So thank you for sharing your time and your insight. And we look
My
forward to
pleasure.
seeing you next month.
Thank you. Me too. Looking forward to it. First time in Austin. I think it's going to be great.
I look forward to seeing you here.